why did you come here?
I'm not Romanian, but I certainly put Romania on the map. I don't feel like anyone talked about Romania ever. I think that the Western world is in serious decline and that literally in real time you can see it falling apart. So you have to find somewhere else to live. And the world's not really that big. I think that the values which held the Western world together at some point have been proven to be false, and all of it is a lie. I feel like all of the metrics in which you can measure the success of a society, the Western world is failing in. So once you accept that, you say, okay, the West is failing. It's on its way down. I can't live in the West. And then you look at a map and you look at South America, which is very dangerous, and I'm not South American and I don't speak Spanish. And then Eastern Europe, which is where we are now, it preserves its culture via religion, and they have some other societal traditions, which certainly preserve the culture better. It's a slower decline. So I felt like this might be a good place to live. Unfortunately, I think in the 7 years I've been here, Eastern Europe is catching up with the West, and I feel like it's going to go down the same hole. So I'm going to have to move again. But when I moved here 7 years ago, it just felt like a safer place, felt like a nicer place, and decided to leave. I don't see what America or the England or the West has for people anymore.
Okay, question. Do you think that this generation is more evil than the past generations?
I don't think they're evil. I think they're lost, and I think they're misguided. And I think we're now living in a culture where I'm a full-grown man. I'm 36 years old. I catch myself, even at my ripe old age and high level of professionalism, sometimes for a few seconds, only a few seconds before I correct myself, scrolling on garbage. Imagine how these 14 and 15-year-old children are even being raised. Just scrolling through these social media algorithms, which are deliberately designed to poison their mind. And they're going to school, they're being fed absolute garbage, and they have no religious connotations, no God, and no family unit. They're just a mess. The biggest struggle that men have in the Western world today is finding a woman who they believe is worth being monogamous to. I don't think men have a problem with monogamy as much as men have a problem finding a woman who they truly believe they should be monogamous to. Also, that's something that's interesting about monogamy, because we can talk about this and it can be a very interesting conversation. In days of old, high-value men, important men, kings, warriors, whatever, had multiple wives. And they had to look after the multiple wives, or they had mistresses, and they had children with them all, and they had to look after them all. Mm-hmm. In certain cultures today, that is still the case. In certain religions today, that is still the case. In the Christian world, in the Western world, we have said that's unacceptable. We should be monogamous.
Yeah.
But then you have the majority of men who are monogamous are cheating. The ones who are not cheating are using prostitutes sometimes, or going to strip clubs sometimes, or consuming pornography. So they're not truly, actually loyal. So you've moved the idea of a man having 3 or 4 women he loves and taking care of to a man having one woman he's supposed to love and doing a whole bunch of things in secret. You've just subsidized monogamy and you've removed it all towards pornography and degeneracy. I'm just talking about it from a societal perspective. I'm making an overall societal observation, the fact that now we have monogamous societies, but because they're not truly monogamous, all of the desire is being outsourced towards degeneracy, as opposed to having a society where a man is allowed more than one wife, for example, and then the degeneracy isn't needed. You don't need pornography and you don't need prostitution if you're allowed to have 2, 3, 4 wives if you're successful. And the point I was going to make earlier is that in certain countries, this is still the case. And I'm just speaking here in generalities. I don't have proof for any of this, but if you look at Russia, right? Russia is a Christian nation. There's a lot of Muslims as well, but it's traditionally a Christian nation. But if you're a very rich, powerful Russian man, and I've been to Moscow, I can assure you, you have maybe 4 or 5 wives. Or not wives, 4 or 5 girls.
Yeah.
And your wife understands about who the other girls are, and she doesn't really care. Don't look, don't care, don't ask. I have a Bentley, I have a big house, I have the children. He plays around with these other girls sometimes. I don't care, I'm his wife, and that's just how things are set up. That particular man who's very, very rich, he's not interested in pornography, he's not interested in prostitutes, he's satisfied, he has enough for whatever his ego desires or his heart desires. Then you look at the West, and you look at the most degenerate things which can possibly happen, which are actually levels above prostitution and pornography. If you look at Epstein's Island, for example, when you have very rich, powerful men and they're told by the public sphere, you're not allowed to have more than one woman, but they don't have God to control them. They're godless. Then they say, okay, well, how can I satisfy myself if God's not restricting me? The society's saying I can only have one woman. I'm not allowed to have 4 or 5, which would satisfy me in some regard for my ego or unhealthy reason or whatever my reason is. So I'm going to end up doing things in private. I'm going to end up doing things in secret. And then you have Epstein's Island appear. So it's kind of interesting. God is important and God is extremely required to restrict people. But if you take the God out of the element and you only use society to try and restrict the sexual desires of people and tell them they have to be monogamous, you're going to end up with more degeneracy than if men were allowed to be polyamorous and have more than one wife. Pornography is bad for society. Okay, why are they trying to destroy the society? Who are these people? What is their end goal? Is their end goal the sexualization of children? Is their end goal 12-year-olds to sit there and watch pornography and want to have sex? Is their end goal to confuse 12-year-olds to want them to try and change genders? Is that their end goal? I don't know. Is that why they take down the country's flag and put up another flag? This is another thing you have to understand. We talk about the Western world being fallen. What even is the culture of the Western world anymore? We have gang signs, and we have frozen food, and we have the pride flag. What else? Like, what even is there anymore that unifies us in any regard? I mean, I think, I'm pretty sure, and I've never tested this, I don't want to find out, I'm under enough matrix attacks, but if you were to burn an American flag and burn a pride flag, you do more time for burning the pride flag. It's a hate crime. So you have to actually then understand is, okay, if this is destroying society, is it being done on purpose? And what is the end goal of it? And who's doing it in the first place? And then it gets really scary. I agree with everything you're saying about pornography, and I agree with everything you're saying about monogamy. I'm just trying to analyze the world and how it actually functions, and how do you fix these things? We talk about God. I think God gives you strength. And I also believe one of the primary objectives of a religion, which ties back into what we were saying earlier about how the world could be fixed if men and women stay together. I think the primary objective of a religion is to preserve a culture. If a religion doesn't preserve the culture, then it's failing in some regard. You should look at a religion and look at the culture underneath that religion and say, okay, it's a successful religion because the culture is adhering to its creeds. So I understand that it is my battle, if I believe in God, to try my best to preserve the culture. And then you're asking, how do I fight the matrix? I think you fight that via masculine empowerment, and I'll tell you why. Because we were just sitting here talking about how the devil uses fear, and you're completely correct. And I think that women are easier to scare than men. And I think that now we live in a society, especially in the West, where women have been empowered to the point, well, I'm not against female empowerment, I'm not a misogynist, but they've been empowered to the point where they're more powerful than men in most scenarios. They're more powerful than men in the divorce court, most powerful than men in the custody court, more powerful than men in terms of the education system, more powerful than men in terms of their testimony, more powerful than men. I'll give you endless examples. If 10 men get murdered, nobody cares. If 10 women get murdered, it's gonna be a national news story for weeks. Their life is more valuable. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be. It always has been because they can create life. My point is we now live in a society which I believe is a matriarchy. It's feminized. And men are feminized by extension. And men being feminized means that women are in charge and women are fearful. As a man, your life is supposed to be shit. My argument to this is people go, oh, I don't feel good. I say, good. Your life as a man is going to be terrible the entire time. Well, it says in the Quran, just because you believe, you think Allah will not test you. Just because you believe in me, you think you're not going to be tested.
I think being tested is a great thing for
That's
you.
how God shows love. Masculine empowerment is how we actually get closer to God and how we fix the fight we're in against the matrix.